Well, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a murder down under, a mass murder, actually, in Australia, and Tucker Carlson is the primary suspect. I'm serious. You've got to see these clips of him taking on these journalists and their all too predictable line of questioning. Plus, we have the Biden administration, and they want to remove age limits on trans surgery. Shocker. Which brings me to this very important question. Have you heard of Baphomet? Probably not, and you definitely should know exactly what we are talking about, especially my listeners in France who still know that Brigitte Macron is a man. All that, and of course more, coming up on Candace. So lately, Baphomet has been trending sporadically throughout 2024 on Twitter. I think most recently because King Charles premiered his painting and people were going, I see the horns of Baphomet. Maybe you agree with that, maybe you don't. I kind of do really see it, but some other people that work with me don't. The point is that Baphomet is a sabbatic goat, a deity, first drawn up by a man named Eliphas Levi, who was born in 1810 in France. Now, Levi was an occultist. He wrote books on dark magic and the Kabbalah. I'll let you take a listen to this exorcist, Daniel Rehill, who sat down with Michael Knowles for an interview. Take a listen.
So when we talked about the transgender, I don't know if you know this, but one of the ancient images of Satan is Baphomet.
Yeah.
Okay, what is Baphomet? So he's got the goat head, yeah. He's got the women's torso with the breasts, and the man's down below. So that's not a new thing. So imagine the devil, he identifies as transgender as that image.
He is correct. And to reiterate that, Baphomet, again, is a humanoid figure with a goat's head that embodies both genders. And it has the breast of a woman, and it also is depicted as having both male and female organs. Now, we're not going to get too much into the history of Baphomet, but suffice to say that Satanists worship this deity via sexual rituals, which include sodomy and homosexuality. So we look around the world today and we suddenly feel that there is definitely a certain agenda being pushed, specifically in the West. And I always recount this conversation that has stayed with me for a very long time. I was walking down the streets of DC, where there is a lot of pride, and I was with a Romanian young woman, and she said genuinely, like not to be offensive at all, she was asking me this question meaningfully. She said, why are there so many gay people in America? We just don't see this out east. And I thought, wow, what a interesting question. And she is correct, because I have been to Romania and you don't see that. And now some people would argue, especially people that are on the left, well, it's because they're all having to hide because the society is so backwards and so traditional. Okay, it doesn't matter where you stand. It's the question itself that is interesting. And what I have noticed as of late is that androgyny is definitely getting the Hollywood treatment. I mean, I think it was before my show went off air, I was covering Kristen Stewart. She recently was on the cover of maybe Vogue, maybe Vanity Fair, doesn't really matter. But she was promoting her new movie, and she was so proud because she was portraying this butch lesbian. But even the way the writer was talking about how Kristen Stewart, like the real Kristen Stewart, not the actress, was behaving throughout this interview, they were adding these little sentences about, oh, she sits down with her legs spread wide open and cracks open a can of beer. It's a very androgynous depiction of Kristen Stewart. And of course, we also see this in the education system. They are pushing gender theory. You can actually get a degree. Could you imagine spending six figures to get a degree in gender studies? The children are learning about what it means to be non-binary, not bound to any of the sexes or any of the genders. And if you are a sensible person, by now you are concluding that something bigger seems to be going on, which makes Cat Williams' interview with Joe Rogan fascinating. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to park aside the fact that Cat Williams is clearly high out of his mind, because Joe Rogan does allow people to smoke while he is interviewing them. But what he is talking about is interesting. And what he is saying is that he knew that transgenderism was going to be pushed in Hollywood before it was actually pushed in Hollywood. Take a listen.
things are secular, so I understood that the earliest I had seen that word transgender was Baphomet, the transgender. And so I knew that in the ritual of Baphomet, the transgender, to show allegiance to him, you had to kiss his ass ring.
Really?
And it said both of those things. So I knew that both of those things would become popular in the future, and that somehow calling people the goat would be normalized over the sheep being always the most popular reference.
Suddenly you have a bunch of Hollywood types trotting out their children, and they want you to know that their children are either non-binary or their children are transgender. You've got J-Lo. She's got a child that is somewhere in the middle. You've got Ben Affleck, who also has a child that does not identify as their sex. You've got Charlize Theron, same exact thing, spoke about how she knew that her child, because they were swimming in a bathtub and looked up in one day and said, "Mommy, I'm this," that they obviously must have been the opposite gender. And of course, Caitlyn Jenner, when we think about how they sort of glamorized Caitlyn Jenner coming out, it became a Hollywood story, became a part of the Kardashian story, which leads to the question of who is it that sets trends? Are trends natural? Do you think that they happen by accident? Well, I can tell you where I am at. I've been very open about the fact that the book Chaos, which is required summer reading if you are a listener of the show, that book broke my brain. It is both terrifying and clarifying at the exact same time. It makes you realize that the 60s was really an era where demons won. Talks a lot about the hippies generation, the long hair, the fashion. And when you think about that generation, it very much permanently edited the tastes of American culture. It was this counter-cultural movement. And I think about that because my granddad, when I asked him before he died, like, what actually happened? How were people of your generation just the best people ever who worked hard, kept their families together, and then everything changed, granddad? How could this have happened? And my granddad looked at me. I'll never forget this. He said, it was those damn hippies. And yes, they were this countercultural movement, the first that attacked the tradition of family and religion. That's what I would say. It was this focus on breaking down family and the Christian faith in America. And it was successful. And what you learn when you walk away from that book is that they always have used celebrities and big events to usher in mass psychoses. You can think about this with COVID. Who were the people on Instagram that were rolling up their sleeves? I got my vaccine. Have you gotten yours? And then everyone's like, oh, should I do it? Because this celebrity is doing it. So I definitely should trust that this is okay. That is a form of idolatry. Trust these people. These are your new gods. And of course, teenagers fawn over these celebrities, long lines. I was a part of that. I had celebrities that I was obsessed with. Just like it was with the Beatles. They brought in the long hair, free love, LSD. Forget your super religious parents. We're having fun. This is all about freedom. And people listened. People got right into line. I'm telling you guys, it is really important to read that book, Chaos, because what I walked away with was an understanding that what the 60s was a spiritual battle that was waging in our country. And unfortunately, as I said, the bad guys won. They won Hollywood, they won media, and we've really been playing catch up ever since. And once you read, digest, and accept the information in that book, then virtually everything else becomes plausible. I'll give you an example. If you had asked me before I had read that book whether or not the conspiracy theory that the Beatles were a government-controlled operation was true, I would have been like, are you crazy? What do you mean the government controlled an entire group? And now I'm like, no, of course, absolutely. They were a part of a government psychological operation. And further to that point, which is not in this book, by the way, is this bizarre fact that the doorman when John Lennon was shot, Jose Perdomo, he was once the chief of the Secret Service in Cuba. He later on joined the CIA. Oh, gosh, I guess that's just an accident. That key witness who saw what happened was CIA. Anyways, don't need to go down that dark rabbit hole, but suffice it to say that there are a lot of other interesting, compelling elements about the Beatles, weird covers. This cover that they did Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And they had all sorts of people on the cover. Psychologists, Carl Jung, Albert Einstein. He's made some contributions. Marilyn Monroe. She ushered in some things in the 60s, certainly, if you're thinking about her relationship with JFK. Aleister Crowley, that's probably the craziest one because, yeah, he was an occultist. Why did they pick these individuals to go on the cover? Who knows? What I can tell you for certain, right now, if you are not awake to the fact that we are once again in a very severe spiritual battle, and I am talking about angels versus demons. Let me tell you something. If you are fighting demons without recognizing that they are, in fact, demons, then it's the figurative knife to the gunfight. You are bringing a knife to a gunfight. They have used decades of psychology, education, Hollywood idols, and scientific theories of evolution and enlightenment to draw us further and further from the truth. But I have faith because we are openly talking about these topics. I think everybody is recognizing that the evil just seems to be more in our face than ever before. And I think this time the angels are going to win. And that's all I'm going to say on that topic. But speaking of demons, according to a recent report, Planned Parenthood continues to rake in billions despite dwindling clients. The biggest takeaway is that Planned Parenthood is generating vast profits, including millions, which come from taxpayer funding. But with preborn, we can reverse that. We get a chance to steal their clientele, meaning that the babies that they are trying to kill, we can rescue them. Preborn operates on a very slim budget, saving over 200 babies every single day, and they've got absolutely no government funding. Preborn's network of clinics is situated in the darkest corners of the nation. They compete head-to-head with the abortion giants, and they need our help now more than ever. When you donate just $28 to Preborn, you will offer a free ultrasound to an expectant mother caught in a crisis. And I'm sure that other moms listening to this know that once you hear your baby's heartbeat, everything changes. You recognize that this is, in fact, a precious life. The propaganda, the figurative scales, it just falls from your eyes. The baby's chance at life doubles. So please sponsor a precious baby's life today. Your tax-deductible gift will go directly towards saving babies' lives. Just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or you can go to preborn.com/Candace. That's preborn.com/Candace. All right, now let's get into some stories. Of course, before we get into our first story, I'm going to remind you, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We are very close to 2 million subscribers. I'm excited about that. Also, if you want to support the show, head to locals.com. Find me. You can give a monthly donation or you can give a one-time donation. We appreciate it no matter what. Okay. This is not that surprising of a story, but what should be surprising is how careful I'm going to have to be talking about it because, well, we are aware that on the topic of transgenderism, there are some very strict protocols at YouTube and all over on social media. You have to be very careful not to offend the narrative whatsoever. So I'm just going to simply report on the facts that New York Times is also reporting on. Here is their headline: Biden officials pushed to remove age limits for trans surgery. Documents show. This is just from a couple of days ago, this report. It reads, newly released emails from an influential group issuing transgender medical guidelines indicate that U.S. health officials lobbied to remove age minimums for surgery in minors because of concerns over political fallout. Health officials in the Biden administration pressed an international group of medical experts to remove age limits for adolescent surgeries from guidelines for care of transgender minors, according to newly unsealed court documents. Well, guys, isn't that just absolutely amazing that everything going on in this country, this is what their administration feels it's so important to be pushed? Why do you think that is? Why do you think they are concerned that the age limit just needs to be dealt with? We don't want an age limit. We want people to be able to get trans procedures at any age. Why would that be something that is on the agenda of the Biden administration at all? And why would it be something that you would have to have unsealed in court? I'm really interested in this word expert, by the way, right? When it says that they are consulting experts, that experts produce documents explaining why this is something that should be done. This is always the case. They point to experts that will explain to you why transgenderism is good. They will point to experts. They will find the experts that will dictate what is coming down the pipeline. That is what they do. Experts are used as a piece of the mass psychosis because people implicitly trust experts as if they're not human beings, but as if they're demigods, right? We saw this, no doubt, all throughout COVID. Trust the experts, trust the experts. I mean, that phrase was repeated so many times. It was almost a system of brainwashing. It was a system of brainwashing, and it was effective. People listened. They trusted the celebrities. They trusted the experts. They trusted the media members to bring on the experts to tell them exactly what it is that they should do. You know what they didn't trust? They didn't trust their God-given gut. Not the majority of people. I did. But the majority of people did not trust their guts. The experts are there to make you forego your gut. Your gut is divine. You go, this is a little weird. This feels very rushed. They're telling us it's going to be an apocalypse unless I offer them my body. Here's my thing. If you do not have bodily autonomy, if the government can make a decision and against your comfort, say, roll up your sleeve, or you're not going to be able to go to work, you're not going to be able to function, and we're going to inject something into your body, you don't live in a free country. That's the reality. You do not live in a free country. And so it's important to cover stories like this when you see the government officials, again, trying to use a team of experts to suggest that guidelines should be shifted. It's important to cover these stories so that you wake up to the fact that the experts themselves are a part of the cartel. And I believe that the cartel has done many things in America that have been destructive, most notably the opioid crisis, which was created by the experts. They consulted experts. They got drugs passed. They absolutely knew that these drugs were highly addictive. And we've been dealing with the consequences ever since. But you guys know me. Don't listen to me. I'm not an expert. I'm what they term a conspiracy theorist. Fortunately, a conspiracy theorist who has 3 healthy children because I have not offered their bodies to the government. And I do my research outside of what is provided by the mainstream media. Now, speaking of the mainstream media, Tucker has just been an absolute joy. Everybody knows I am a Tucker Carlson stan. I make no apologies for that. There is so much synergy between me and Tucker Carlson. And like I said, there's just so few people in media that I actually look up to. And when we sort of watched what Fox News did to them, and like I've said, Fox News has always been good to me, but I think we all felt the same way about what they did to their lead talent. And we all felt that we had developed this relationship with him as somebody that we could actually trust, that was still a part of the corporate media apparatus. And so to see him out there and selling out stadiums all across the world and to see the success that he has had independently is tremendously inspiring to me. And then, of course, seeing this, again, he's down under. And as is to be expected, he is dealing with reporters who are trying to get him in a gotcha moment, one reporter after the other. And it just becomes apparent that Tucker has had enough of their questions that are just so evident. You know, they're just so, it's so evident who they work for. And a ton of people were asking him about Putin. And here's what Tucker said in response. Here's a quick clip of that.
My question on Putin. Putin! Which I think you did strategically because you knew it's what we'd ask.
Putin! He's so bad!
And I also appreciate that...
Did he make you take the COVID shot?
Take the what?
The COVID shot? No, he didn't. Sorry.
The COVID shot saved probably tens of millions.
Oh, yeah, and definitely. Safe and effective. This is why everyone loves the media.
Probably 100 times more lives than Putin has killed in Ukraine.
It's like a time capsule. It's like you're like the last Japanese soldier on Okinawa. You think the war's still going. No, it didn't save millions of lives. It's hilarious. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm being boorish.
I just love that so much. I love it because he's correct. They sound like droids. They all say the exact same thing. There is no independence in the media. It is just a carbon copy. And they all pretend it's going to be a hard-hitting question. How predictable. You're going to ask him about Putin because how dare a journalist? without the authority of corporate media, go out to interview Putin without saying all of the things that the corporate media would like suggested about Putin, because they are just itching to go to war with him. And as I said yesterday, I'm just not biting on this propaganda. I'm sorry. I am not here for another Christian country to be taken down and flooded with migrants, because that's what they do. They flood these countries with migrants, and then they render these countries completely subjugated. People become impoverished. The countries don't look like those countries anymore. I mean, literally, you can go through the cities, some cities in America, and how dilapidated are they? And then you go to Russia, and as Tucker demonstrated, you have a faithful country. You have a country that has clean subways. You have a country that actually is doing, despite the media telling us otherwise, has been doing well economically, and is standing independent from the globalist cabal that we are facing here today that keeps trying to convince us that we need to look around us, see filth, and smile. Learn to love your surroundings. Smile. Learn to love it. It's going to be so great. And yes, they are intentionally flooding these countries with migrants. It is so evident that they are doing this intentionally. They do not want us to have any identity. Ultimately, their goal is human enslavement. They want us to be happy slaves. And so it just brings me so much pleasure when you see people like Tucker calling them out on that. And just on time, another reporter, brave reporter, journalist, stepped to the plate to ask Tucker about his, idea of white replacement, quote unquote, white replacement. Take a listen.
So you talked a little bit about immigration, and in the past you've talked about how white Australians, Americans, Europeans are being replaced by non-white immigrants in what is often referred to as the Great Replacement Theory. This is the same...
Have I said that whites are being replaced?
Well...
I don't think I said that.
Well, it's been mentioned on your show 4,000 times. And
really, when did I say that?
On your show.
I said whites are being replaced?
You have said that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I would challenge you to cite that, because I'm pretty sure I haven't said that. I said native-born Americans are being replaced, including blacks.
Native-born Americans.
Native-born Americans.
And
Americans black Americans have been, African Americans have been in the United States for, in many cases, their families over 400 years. And their concerns are every bit as real and valid and alive to me as the concerns of white people whose families have been there 400 years. My concern is that the people who are born in the country are the main responsibility of its leaders. And as noted earlier, when those leaders shift their concern from the people whose responsibility it is to take care of to people around the world, to put their priorities above that of their own citizens, that's immoral. And they are being replaced in my country, people who are born in the United States. And the birth rate tells the whole story. They're not at replacement rate. And so the U.S. population is growing because we're importing people from other countries. And my view is that happy people have children, and a functioning economy allows them to do that. And we don't have that. And so you need to fix the economy and fix the culture and make it so that people who want to have kids can. You don't just go for the quick sugar fix of importing new people. Like, that's my position. And if you think that's racist, that's your problem.
Yeah, and it is absolutely true. They are replacing our culture, this whole concept of multiculturalism, and this is what the journalists do. If you're starting to notice that you don't recognize your surroundings, maybe you're in the UK, maybe you're growing up in England, and you're going, hey, I don't recognize this place. This is what the culture has completely changed. Maybe you're growing up in America, and you're going, hey, this is not the America that I remember. I say that now, having grown up in the 90s. This is not the America that I remember. I walk down the streets or drive down the streets rather where I grew up, and everything looks like we're becoming a impoverished country. You can't even get roads paved. But if you notice it, if you begin to voice those concerns that something evil is going on, obviously then you get called a racist. Oh, you just don't want migrants flooded into your country. It's because you're a racist. Yeah, that is the slave owners trying to convince their slaves not to believe that they are slaves, not to believe that they are being used like cattle, right? They are essentially making us go out there. They are taking our tax dollars and they are spending it however they want to. You get to work. Nothing around you is going to get better. And if you notice it, we're going to hit you over the head by having you branded as a racist. And then, of course, this reporter goes on to describe how awful that replacement theory is because, well, that's how you get shootings. And shootings are really bad, right? Take a listen.
This is the same theory, or as you say, idea, that has inspired the New York Buffalo shooting where 11 black Americans were killed. Two white Americans were killed.
Like,
and it's also inspired...
it's not, first of all...
It's inspired one of the worst Australian guns of all time.
How do they get people this stupid in the media? I guess it doesn't pay well. Look, I'm sorry. I've lived among people like you for too long, and I don't mean to call you stupid. Maybe you're just pretending to be, but I'm totally against violence. I'm totally against the war in Ukraine, for example, which doubtless you support. And like all dutiful liberals, support more carnage. I don't. I hate mass shootings, actually. Nothing I said, what does it mean to inspire something? My views are not bigoted against any group. They're honest, they're factual. That's not hate, that's reality. And my views derive from my deep concern for Americans, actually. Americans aren't having kids because they can't afford to. And nobody in charge cares. And so that's my position. That doesn't inspire mass shootings. How dare you try to tie me to some lunatic who murdered people?
So therefore you support gun control?
What? I thought it couldn't get dumber, but it did. No, I don't support disarming law-abiding people so they can't defend themselves. So the government has a monopoly on violence? I don't think so. First of all, in my country, that's illegal, as you know. But moreover, it should be illegal in every country. A sovereign person has the right to defend himself and his family. Period. And that said, I'm totally opposed to harming anyone. Are you concerned about the war in Ukraine? And the countless innocents being murdered there every single day? I doubt you are. Probably Putin bad. I am. I'm a Christian. I hate violence. I hate mass shootings. I have guns at home and often on my person when I'm in the United States, I'm proud to say, because I want to defend myself and those I love against violence. That's the point.
And of course, it is just so ironic. It really is something to have people step to the plate and try to accuse you of inspiring shootings, right? That's always their move, by the way. Remember, I was notoriously accused of inspiring a mosque shooting in New Zealand. That's how they take you out. Your ideas are so harmful. Mosque shootings are happening in places that you've never been to, countries you've never been to, like New Zealand. And Tucker, of course, puts her in her place and reminds her that these people who claim to be, against violence are the exact same people that are very happy as we never stop dropping bombs on civilians overseas. That's the truth. And then when you call them out and say, well, you hate violence so much, you want us to give up our guns, and yet you are perfectly okay with millions and millions of civilians being killed overseas. You're mum on that part. Yeah, because you're a puppet for the government. We get it. We see that now. That's who these journalists work for. They do not work for the people, right? Do not believe that. These people work for the government. They are on government marching orders, and they see people like Tucker Carlson and people like me as problematic because they're waking up everybody to the evils of the government. And let me tell you something, taxes, it's an evil of the government. It is theft. Which brings me to Tax Network USA, because I know there are so many people that watch this show that are overwhelmed with back taxes and are struggling with unfiled returns. You're just going, everything I make, it seems like it's being taken from the government. Well, with 20,000 new hires, the IRS has decided that they're going to step up enforcement since the end of COVID relief programs, issuing millions of pay-up notices in 2024. So if you're one of these people that is worried about the IRS collection tactics, there is no need to face these guys alone. Tax Network USA can help. Tax Network USA is the nation's premier tax relief firm with a history of negotiating over $1 billion in tax relief for clients. They offer a range of services, including penalty forgiveness, hardship programs, where you might not even have to repay anything until your tax debt expires. They even offer in-compromise solutions for lump sum settlements. So whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their team of experts is prepared to assist you. Even if you're behind on your taxes due to missing personal or business records, Tax Network USA can guide you through the process of catching up. Listen, tax season is over, and for the IRS, that means collections season has begun. So contact Tax Network USA for personalized support with your tax issues. Handling IRS matters without professional help is extremely risky. Protect your financial security by seeking guidance from Tax Network USA. To schedule a complimentary consultation, call 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Candace. Again, that's 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Candace. So yesterday we talked about American imperialism, and this user at Sarah wrote, I got all chilled watching this episode. I am from Croatia, and some people here are aware of the fact of how the USA government influenced war in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia countries worked well together, and there was never objective conflict among people, but was mainly created by the mainstream media. For some reason, there was huge interest in separating Yugoslavia into smaller countries. We had so many independent factories before the war, and everything gradually collapsed. There was a big interest in bringing independent nationalities down, because in that way, they are easily controlled and manipulated that way. There's definitely something worth looking into. Sending you and to all the awakened people, warm regards. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And this is even in Romania. I mean, what you learn is that when there is war, what follows war is chaos, and they end up buying all of the country's natural resources. That's it. Your country becomes enslaved to debt. That is the purpose of war, is to enslave you all to debt. And then if you notice it, and if you stand up to the debt, then they call you a racist, they call you a white supremacist, they call you a Nazi. How dare you have pride in who you are? And of course, this is the purpose of multiculturalism, because then it disallows that from ever happening. Think about that. If we're rushing in a bunch of different people from all over the world, right now we're receiving a bunch of migrants from Kazakhstan. Obviously, this is a government operation, because how else are they getting here over the border? And the CIA is just perfectly okay with that. Because then if there ever is a group of people who become patriotic, they will then tap into another group of people and make them think that that patriotism is targeted against them. So they'll say to the migrants and the immigrants, stand up against these horrible white supremacist racists, and they keep us warring with each other, when in reality, the problem is coming from the government. So that migration becomes a tool in order to render a country effectively useless against itself. Up next is Telugu. He writes, I'm a man and I happen to be gay. Growing up, I fell into the LGBT agenda. I believed the whole thing. I defended it passionately because I was convinced that I was a victim of some system. After coming out, the LGBT movement took me away from my family, from God, from church, from my lifetime friends. It took me 26 years to wake up to it all. All I had to do was question myself, and I eventually came back to reason, to family, to friends, and to Jesus Christ. Thank you, Candace, for helping to open my eyes. Christ is King. Indeed, Christ is King. I love hearing that story, and it does begin by making people believe that they are part of an identity group. And I've seen this with every group in America. It is like, except for, of course, white men. They hate white, straight men. They are the group that is always the oppressors. Oh, black people, look at slavery. Look at these white men. They did this to you. Oh, Jewish people, look at the Holocaust. Here's who you should hate. No matter what, I want you to become like a Manchurian candidate and just be triggered every time anything happens to a Jewish person. You just think that the Holocaust is right around the corner, or slavery is right around the corner, black people. These things are intentional. And yes, with gay people, they attempted this when the Matt Laramie Project movie took off, and suddenly they were going, you are also a victim group, and we want you to be like Manchurian candidates, and you become very triggered on gay issues. These are all mechanisms of control. Rinse yourself of the idea that you are just an identity. You are not. Of course you're not just identity. I do not care what you look like. What are your actual ideas? That is what brings people together. That is how we can identify within any group. My ideas are that America currently is being subjugated, but I believe in faith. I believe in freedom. And I believe that we can only guarantee those things through free speech. Next up, this person was responding to the video that I showed you of Zelensky wearing latex, dancing to single ladies, like a totally straight man. This person writes, I was today years old when I saw that video of Zelensky, and I'm furious that American money is continuing to flow to him. Meanwhile, I am still waiting for my tax return since filing in February of this year. Is anyone else waiting for their money from the IRS, or didn't get anything this year, or worse, had to owe the government for existing? Man, I wish I was reading that ad that I just read a short time ago. But yes, absolutely. These people are, when we say bad faith actors, quite literally, I don't know what their faith is, but I know that it is bad. I think they're probably occultists when I see these theater boys and they take so much power. And at the end of the day, they are simply playing a role, Zelensky being chief among them at that moment. I got this on Connect. I loved this. I am on that app, Connect. Please connect with me. Alex wrote, Hi, Candace. Thank you for looking at things from different perspectives. I was born and raised in Russia and legally immigrated to the USA. I consider the United States as my home now. However, it was never a plan to move, just the way life happened. While I was amazed by the plethora of opportunities here, I was always exhausted by the way Americans look at Russia. I realized that they know close to nothing about Russia, its people, and what is actually going on there. Conflict in Ukraine is a tragedy, but I always tell people, you can poke a bear only so much until it tries to kill you. My question to you is, what made you look at Russia differently from everyone else? P.S. I really hope you get to go there. You would be blown away and pleasantly surprised. P.P.S. You are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep praying for you. Well, Alex, my answer to your question is when I recognize propaganda, I just pop up and wonder why they are trying to enforce a certain narrative. And it's always been very evident to me that this hatred for Russia is nonsensical. I grew up with Russians, and they were, first and foremost, like the hardest workers in terms of their schoolwork. And then when I moved on, I was working in private equity. I worked with a Russian named Ilya, and I was just so impressed with him. And so every time I've encountered a Russian in my personal capacity, they seem to be people that have extremely good values. They are definitely people that bring forth all of the classics in America. And I'm talking about their contributions in terms of music and the arts, in terms of ballet. And so when the media keeps trying to tell me that they're bad, and I'm also aware of the Christian faith, I just don't believe them. I just don't buy it. I don't buy all of the garbage about Russians. And I'm glad that I'm able to use my platform in that capacity to make people consider their own programming against Russians. Who gave that to you? Likely your parents, who were propagandized by being told to, put their heads under a desk in a nuclear fire alarm situation at school. Think about what that trauma does for a kid. We had fire drills. They were having nuclear drills and being told to go under their desks because maybe the Soviets were going to bomb them. I mean, really crazy stuff and not warranted. And I would love to visit Russia. I would love to interview Putin. I have no issues with Putin as a leader because I know that our leaders have definitely probably murdered a lot more innocent civilians than Putin ever has. Next up, I want you to know that many of you were in the comments saying that it was just me and Savannah who didn't know about the thunder and lightning thing, that didn't know that thunder was the sound of lightning. But no. There was also this person who wrote, I had no idea thunder was the sound of lightning. 58 years old here. So that makes 3 of us. I don't know, guys. You don't learn everything. But my sister also texted me and she had no idea. So maybe the science changed. You ever consider that? Maybe the experts changed the science. Maybe when I was growing up, it wasn't the sound of lightning and things changed thereafter. I trusted the experts. And if their opinions have changed and the scientific consensus has changed, then so be it. All right, guys, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. Reminding you that we only have now 150 Standis cups signed, autographed Standis cups that are signed, available on clubcandace.com. And we have very few of the Standis cups available at all. Even if you get a regular one, head to clubcandace.com. It's a fun way that you can support the show. And as you know, this will be discontinued when we get to 2 million subscribers, which is just right around the corner. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.